to watch this particular episode of Discuss the Chosen. We're in season 4, episode 3, and just a whole lot of action, a whole lot of controversy tonight. And so we're going to have a chance to talk with that. I got a full house with me tonight, so that's good. So let's just go ahead and launch into our discussion. I'll be right back. There they are. So that hello, Janice. I'm looking over this direction so I can say hello to you. And then we have Nikki down there in the bottom left-hand corner. Hello, Nikki. Introduce Lorraine for us. Oh, there you go.
Hi, Lorraine. Up in the right corner.
And Lorraine, introduce Val.
Hey, Val. Welcome.
And Val, introduce Nora.
Uh-oh. Hey, Nora. How you doing?
Hey. So,
There you go.
you got it figured out, man. That's good. So, how are you guys doing tonight?
Good.
Good.
Glad to be back.
Really good.
Yeah, I'm glad to have all of you here with us this evening. That's always fun. So, all right. Before we jump into any questions, what did you think about this episode? Anybody?
I watched this episode.
Say what? Go ahead, somebody.
I watched this episode twice.
You watched it. You watched it twice? Yeah, and your thoughts about it? Mm-hmm. Tell us your thoughts about it, Nora.
I want to watch it again. I want to watch it again.
Yeah, make sure you have some Kleenex handy. So, how about the rest of y'all? What do you think about the episode? Anybody else?
It was sad.
I liked it, but it was sad. Yeah, I kind of see why they did it, though. I see why. I think I see why they did it.
Yeah, I think I see why they did it too. That I don't expect for this to be a very literal retelling of the gospel, but I do think that it is an artistic representation of the truth. I heard Dallas Jenkins say that if you like the show, you should read the book.
Yeah.
because the book gets it right. So, but there's a lot of good things.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Lorraine.
Well, then it seems like they're covering, like it was one thing to contrast, David, and then to contrast Rama's death. It seems like they're answering the human questions that we have: is why wouldn't you save her? Why, and that's a hard question, and it's one that pulls people away from God.
Yeah, that's for sure. Val, you were going to say something, or Nikki? Nikki?
Oh no, I was pointing to Lorraine and him.
I thought it was really good at showing when we mourn, he mourns, because it's like we actually saw the sadness in his face. And sometimes I think we don't always feel that when we're going through something. He can feel kind of removed from it when we're grieving, but I think they really portrayed how he is just right there with us.
Yeah. Even though when we're going through that, it doesn't feel that that's the case necessarily, So, go ahead, Lorraine.
It was almost like the Jesus character wanted to heal her. Like you could see it in his face. He knew his father had not commanded that, but I have never used the description of Jesus as a man of sorrows, acquainted with grief. Like
Yeah.
I think he said, we forget that part of God. And Jesus there, they know sorrow, they know grief.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's take on some of these questions. So this episode begins with King David mourning the sickness of his firstborn son, whom he had with Bathsheba. When the child dies, David ends his mourning, which seems very strange, but and Bathsheba wonders why some prayers are answered and others aren't. David said that worship is fitting no matter what. What do you think, and why? Anybody? Go ahead,
Well,
Nikki.
From personal experience, I can tell you honestly, that hasn't been my go-to right away when I'm
Yeah.
grieving is to worship. But I think that it showed that it brings you closer to Him, and maybe not takes your mind off of it, but can change your focus a little bit. You know, I don't know. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So go ahead, Nora.
So we feel that the Lord doesn't answer our prayers, but technically He does. I was thinking about the time in my life that I thought He did not answer my prayers, but technically He did. You know, I, why did you allow me this thing to happen to me? But then I realized that at the end, I saw His purpose. You
Yeah.
know, I saw His
Yeah.
purpose at the end. Why He didn't answer my prayers, because He's preparing me for much a better conclusion on
Yeah.
my problems. Okay,
Yeah.
like in my situation in life, I saw that because He did not answer my prayers, even though I was just crawling in the floor, then I realized that at the end He lifted me up, and my relationship with Him becomes so much closer. So I agree with Nikki. It's just He brought me closer to Him and understood what He really wants for my life.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Lorene.
And this whole thing with the worship, I was born and raised in the church. We talked about worship all the time, but I've spent maybe the last maybe 25, 30 years really trying to develop that in myself. Worship is not just what I do on Sunday morning for an hour.
Yeah.
That is not worship. It can be part of that. But my worship has to be all the time. And it's a discipline. It's not easy. It's hard to remember to do it, but to worship God in the good times and in the bad times. It's just a hard discipline.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And we can worship God because if we clarify some of our presuppositions about God, then that can be easier for us to worship, because we can be confident that God is love, even when, in this case, the baby dies. That God is love when we don't get what we want. And we also can be confident that God is powerful. And we think that if God really is powerful, what He should do is He should reverse all of these tragedies in life. But He is powerful enough to bring good purpose, to accomplish His good purposes through this broken world in which we live. And so we do live in that tension between a fallen world and the redeemed creation. And that's always going to be hard, So, okay. James and John recount were Jesus's words about asking, seeking, and knocking. They take this to mean that they can ask Jesus for anything they think is best. How might an approach like this lead to disappointment with praying? What do you think?
What we think is best isn't what the Lord thinks is best. So what we might be praying for and wanting, He might not want us to have that. And so if we don't get it, then we're going to be disappointed.
Yeah. So go ahead, Lorene. Go ahead, Lorene.
Well, and they were asking out of their own pride and jealousy. It says ask according to His will. Like, we have to know what that is, and we have to learn how to ask according to. They were just taking that as you can ask for anything, and actually seen this in my own lifetime, that people think they can ask God for anything, and if they like, He's a magic genie, and it's just not that way.
No. But
And
well,
James and John were just listening to their Mima.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
well, they didn't see it either. I mean, that's why they were going to Jesus to ask.
Yeah. And it's what we think is best.
I guess I didn't.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Bill.
Oh no, go ahead. That was it.
What we think is best, we have a limited perspective. And we may be convinced, we may be like 100% convinced that our perspective is right. But that doesn't make it right just because we're convinced.
Exactly.
There's a passage of scripture that in the book of Isaiah that says, as high as the heavens are above the earth, so my thoughts are above your thoughts, and my ways are above your ways. God, and obviously it's a big problem. The problem of evil is a big problem for us, but it's not too big for God. He's able to accomplish His good purposes for our life, even though we don't see how He's going to do that through these evil circumstances. Lorene?
No, I'm done. No. Sorry.
Okay. Alrighty. We've lost my wife. She's having a coughing fit. So let's go ahead and we'll jump over here to the next question. And that's, man, I straightened these things out earlier, but they just keep on flying all over the place. So before Jesus heals the man born blind, someone asks him, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents? That's in John 9:2. Jesus says neither. Rather, this was to display God's work. How might our outlook change if we regarded our problems as an opportunity for God to display His glory in us and through us? Nikki.
I have a really good example of this. Natalie and John that are going through really difficult times. Through this whole thing, every time you talk to them, they're just looking how the Lord can work through them. And boy, has He. People are watching how they're just taking it one day at a time and trusting Him in whatever He decides to do, whether, it's been very negative, we've had a positive moment, but in each moment you ask them, they're just trusting what He's going to do, and whatever He does, they're accepting of it, and that's how God has shown His glory in that situation.
Yeah, they're wonderful witnesses. That I don't know if I'm going to be able to get Janice back, so I'm going to jump over here for now and bring Val in here, and there we go. So just you don't have to go into any great details, but what is, you mentioned John and Natalie, what is the issue that John is facing?
He started out with throat cancer, and then it spread to lungs and other parts of the body, and he's stage 4 cancer. And it's, he's in dialysis 3 times a week. He also has diabetes, and they've just hit one roadblock after another, but they just plug along and keep serving the Lord, and it's just beautiful.
Yeah, it is. It really is. They're an inspiration to so many, including me. So, okay. Oh, let's see. Where am I at? Okay. Oh, all right. Anything else anybody want to say about how problems can be an opportunity for God to display His glory in us?
Well,
Go ahead, Nor.
I could say that the difficulties in life can that we've been through as a married couple
Mm-hmm.
give us an opportunity to we have a best relationship
Yeah.
with each
Yeah.
other after the
Mm-hmm.
difficulties we have been through in life.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
is indeed a blessing, and people look up to me and look up to us. How did you do that? I said,
Mm-hmm.
no, we cannot do it without the Lord's blessing.
Yeah.
Without the Lord,
Exactly.
we
Mm-hmm.
cannot do it.
Yeah. That's so true.
So,
You know. It's we all want God to display His glory in our lives through great works of blessing and prosperity and good things. But it's quite a different thing to give God space or room to work in our lives and say, even if you don't bring about the outcome that I want, that my goal is to praise you through this.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yes.
and and I've seen so many people do that in such a wonderful way. Of course, we talked about John and Natalie, but all throughout my ministry, I have had the privilege of witnessing people face horrible things that I would never want to have to face. And yet, through that, they have demonstrated their faithfulness, and God has really accomplished some wonderful things. And for some of them, they never, ever, ever, ever get better or get what they want, but God still blesses them. So on the Sabbath, Jesus makes a poultice of mud to place on the man's eyes. Now, Jesus could have healed the man directly, but he doesn't. Why do you think that he chose to antagonize the authorities and heal the man like this?
that is Jesus.
Yeah,
He can do. He does everything he wants.
yeah, he does everything. What might be some of the reasons why he decides to do it this way? Because he could have healed the man directly, but Jesus does not do that. Go ahead, Lorene.
Well, I think it's because the religious leaders were always spouting the law,
Mm-hmm.
but the law always was walking all over people. Like, and Jesus was, I think Jesus was showing them that this was an act of love towards this blind man. The law said he wasn't supposed to make the poultice,
Yeah.
but the love said, do this and show that the loving is over the law. And I think people get messed up with the law because the law
Mm-hmm.
is to show us our own wrongdoing and our wrongdoing against others. It's not to control us.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
the leaders, they were using it to control and have power. So
Mm-hmm. Janice says down here that not just obeying every law was not the answer to God's love. So these guys had lost sight
yes.
of something very important,
Yeah.
and they really became very insistent and well schooled in their error. you know that
Yeah.
you know. So, Nora, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I think Jesus wanted to show everyone that he is the Sabbath.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That the Sabbath, how many laws they had. You cannot do this, you cannot do that. And
Mm-hmm.
he's trying to tell the people, hey, I'm the Sabbath. I can do everything I want in the Sabbath because I am the Sabbath.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jesus says or Janice says that Jesus wanted to blow some minds.
Yeah.
I think that actually you're aiming too high. I think he wanted to transform some hearts,
Yeah.
but they just weren't. They just were not going to listen. And sometimes things have to be brought to a head like that, so that you can see the real fruit of their lives, which was not good. I think Val, you had a question or a statement you were going to make.
I was just going to say that he was also showing that their laws had no basis, and but how he went on through that whole scene, he just went on and on. He goes, "I've just only begun." So
Yeah.
that was really good.
Just,
I like that too.
don't get me riled up.
Yeah.
One of the things you're not going to do, and that's you're not going to win an argument with Jesus. Now you might think you're right, but no, you're not going to win an argument with Jesus. So if Jesus could heal the blind and raise the dead, why didn't he just go around doing that all the time? What then was the purpose for his miracles? I mean, he could do that. We've already seen, it doesn't matter if you watched The Chosen or if you read the Bible. Obviously, I prefer that you read the Bible, but I also see the benefit in how The Chosen gets people to talk and think about issues that they probably wouldn't previously had considered. And certainly we've been introduced to this Jesus who can cast out demons. He can raise the dead. He can walk on water, and he can heal the blind and cause the lame to walk. So why doesn't he do that? And you can't plead the fifth here and say, well, not everybody has faith, because not everybody who received a healing from Jesus had faith. Go ahead, Lorraine.
Well, one thing, a physical human being could not do that. They could not walk around and heal everybody. You can't be a human being because you have to rest and eat, and he can't just run around and heal every single person in his circle. It would be I would say an impossibility, but with God nothing is impossible. But just but I think the purpose was Jesus. The healing kind of was a side benefit. Jesus
Exactly.
He was there to save the lost.
Mm-hmm.
The healing side benefit, and so we got to see that should be enough for us.
John talks about in his gospel, if I remember right, there's 7 signs, miraculous signs in the Gospel of John, and he calls them signs, and he says there that let me just look it up. It's in the Gospel of John. It's like the last chapter or the second to the last chapter, and it says there that it says many other signs. There we go. It's the last verse, actually, in the last chapter. Jesus also did many other things. If they were all written down, I suppose the whole world could not contain the books that were written. All right, that's not the text that I wanted to get. I think it's in why am I blanking out on this? But it says, Jesus did many other miraculous signs, but these are written. There it is.
Are you thinking of evil generation?
No. Here it is. It's in John 20. It says, the disciples saw Jesus do many other miraculous signs in addition to the ones recorded in this book. But these are written so that you may continue to believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing in him, you will have life by the power of his name. So that's John 20, verses 30 and 31. So the purpose of the signs was not to alleviate human suffering, although it did that. The purpose of the signs was to point to a larger reality, that I like the illustration. There is another series of videos that the creators of The Chosen have produced, and it's called the Round Table Discussions. And so some of the theologians behind this production, they get together with the creator, who's Dallas Jenkins, and they talk about this. And one guy made this illustration, and I'm just going to kind of modify it a little bit for my own purposes. But let's say you're driving down the freeway and there's a big sign up, like you see on the freeway, and it will show oftentimes the names of the restaurants that are there and the gas stations that are there, and so on and so forth. Those signs in and of themselves is that they are not. That's not their purpose, just for them to exist for themselves. They are there to point you to that larger reality behind the sign. Mm-hmm. And so that's the same with Jesus' miracles, is that while it's true, we can actually deduce a lot from Jesus' miracles. For instance, when he walked on water, we can conclude that Jesus has power over nature. When he raises the dead, he has power over death. When he gives sight to the blind and he causes the lame to walk and the deaf to hear, that he has power to restore the created order, But so it's those things are really meant. And I think it's very interesting that God just doesn't clobber us over the head. He really doesn't. He just doesn't clobber us over the head, because he could do that, but he's not really interested in compelling faith. He's interested in inviting faith. Go ahead, Lorraine.
And a little known secret is we're all going to be healed.
Yeah.
I mean, we are all going to be healed, and science doesn't really implicate that. But I know I say little known secret. Of course, it's not a secret, because I truly believe we are going to be healed. All of us.
Mm-hmm. Amen.
Yeah. Body, soul, and spirit. So, why do you think the religious leaders were so resistant to Jesus' ministry and message?
He really shone the light on what they were. They were just ugly inside and dirty.
Yeah.
And they were just awful. When he was, what did he say? What goes on in the dark will be shown in the light.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They didn't want that. They didn't want that highlighted.
No.
I think what they're doing is self-serving, because they are so afraid of the law. Deep in their heart, they believe, but they don't want to be jailed. They don't want to be punished for believing this. I think they were just afraid to be punished.
Well, I think that was true with some. I think others were just downright resistant. And when you're kind of like at the top of the heap, and that's where these guys were in that culture. They were really at the top of the heap. That's not necessarily something that you want to give up.
Yeah.
Think of politicians in our day. Once you seize that power, yeah, I like to retain it. Go ahead, Lorene.
That is exactly what I think. That is when you have that power, and I have actually seen this in my very own life. I just saw people with power. They just didn't care what anyone else thought, or they were open to any other input. There was no other way but their way, and it corrupted them. I just saw it. It was terrible.
Yeah. Janice writes, maybe they were so used to being honored that they wanted Jesus to honor them. Yeah. That's kind of a tough one. There is that now there's a new sheriff in town.
Yeah.
And if you guys want to, you can be my deputy.
Yeah.
But you're not going to be the sheriff.
Yeah.
Crazy. So, with all of the problems that go with, and I'm going to use the term somewhat advisedly, but with religion, because the Bible doesn't teach against religion. In the book of James, it says pure religion is to visit the orphans and widows in their affliction, and to keep yourself unstained from the world. So the Bible does talk about religion and doesn't say that it's a bad thing. A lot of people, kind of have this idea that, well, I'm going to steer clear of all churches and all quote unquote organized religion because I can do it better. Kind of if I just freelance it or whatever. But that's not how God wants us to pursue this. He wants us to pursue the spiritual life in community, not just in isolation, but in community. And I think that that's actually important because none of us, there's some good checks and balances that come with community. If, however, a church or a religious organization goes off the rails, then obviously you need to be wise enough to detect that, and if you can't remedy it, then steer clear of it. So, but you said we talked about that one already. Let's try this one. Jesus says that an evil generation seeks a sign. What does he mean by this?
Was he talking about the unbelievers?
Well, what do you think? What is he talking about here? Is it the unbelievers, or is this even the religious people? They are seeking a sign. Why might seeking a sign be an unholy thing to do?
Because then you're believing by sight and not by faith.
Yeah. God is. Go ahead, Lorena.
I was just going to say, one of my issues that I struggle with is wanting more. Like one more piece of cake, one more whatever it is, I want more. And I know that's a lack of trust in God on my part. To me, asking for more signs is a lack of faith, because God has given us so many already. So many signs. Why do we need any more? Why do we need what we got?
Nora?
I could not agree more with Lorraine, because it's not only the lack of faith. They don't have the faith. I could see even nowadays, even in my close, family and things like that, that they just believe what's on the book. They don't believe. They want sign. I won't believe until there's sign. It's been 2,000 years, and they said the Lord is coming, but He hasn't come. I want a sign that is coming.
Yeah. Janice writes that they had a specific sign in their minds, and Jesus didn't fit those signs.
That's correct.
Yeah. Yeah, God is not a trained dog who performs at our whims. If we just say enough prayers or give enough money or serve humanity enough or whatever else, that we have to kind of like make room for the sovereignty of God. And what that means is that God is going to show up when He thinks it's right to show up, and to have this kind of mentality that if I just say the equivalent of a spiritual abracadabra, and God is supposed to then perform His magic.
Well, don't we see that Jesus or Christ performed the magic on our lives every day? I could
Yeah,
see His magic every day.
yeah,
I
yeah,
could see His magics in the flowers.
yeah,
I have
yeah,
all the signs all over that I could see around me.
yeah, yeah. There's enough around us that if we only had eyes to see, that we would begin to recognize that God is with us. We just have a couple more questions here tonight, and let me bring those up. Alrighty. Jesus doesn't spare the feeling of the Pharisees when He denounces their practices. Would it have been more loving if He was more diplomatic?
I don't think they'd listen to diplomatic.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know.
Diplomacy is not the answer on that. And I remember it is written in the passage in the Bible. You should rebuke the word rebuke, and
Yeah.
people has to rebuke them in a different way, the way He wanted them to listen. Yeah.
Go ahead, Lorraine.
Yeah, I was thinking about this because I was thinking, well, maybe he was, because it seemed like the first part of his ministry, he wasn't as, he wasn't as pronounced against the Pharisees, even though he called them out. But towards the started really calling them out, and I was trying to figure that out, and I was thinking maybe at the first he was holding back, so to speak, because he was trying to teach his followers. He was trying to teach them and
quite possible. Yeah.
call them out right at the beginning. He needed his followers to watch him and how he dealt with people, and all that, because towards he really started calling them out. By then, the apostles were, enough of him.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
about.
Nor?
I was just thinking an analogy when I was in college. You have the argumentation and debate class. Even though the topic you already know, if you're in the pros and con, you're in the con side of it. Even you know that what the pros is telling the truth, you try to find a way to dissuade the audience that that is not the right thing. And that's what I see right now. That's what I saw with those with the Pharisees. They don't know that He's doing right, but they're just trying to disprove it.
Yeah. Yeah. So and it's interesting to me that the severity with which Jesus confronts the Pharisees, that it was right in the pocket. So in other words, he wasn't being too harsh, and he wasn't being too lax. He spoke, and sometimes speaking the truth in love doesn't sound very loving, and so sometimes we have to be careful about thinking that, well, that sounded pretty harsh. If you were there, I mean, really, if I was there, I say, okay, Jesus, don't you get this? These guys are not happy with you, and you just keep on, slinging mud at them, I think Val said it earlier, where Jesus kind of said, "Well, don't get. I've only got started on this, you know."
Yeah, I don't think they were going to listen to him though. Right there, no matter what he said.
No, yeah,
Can I ask a question?
of course.
I just wanna go a little bit deeper. What do you think represents the mud that Jesus used?
Well, I think you're talking about to healing the guy, the blind
Yeah,
guy.
yeah.
I think it was just. I think that it was just like a poultice. So in other words, he was.
That's right.
Now, I heard these guys talking about on the round table. I think that they kind of pressed the metaphor a little bit too far, but
Yeah,
they said that when God created Adam and Eve, He did it from the dust of the earth, and if this guy truly was born blind, that that this is really a recreation. I mean, obviously, there was some physiological problems that he had with the organ of sight. You know, whether it was his optic nerve or his retina or cornea or whatever it was, there was something going on there that was malfunctioning, or even not, or maybe even not even present. You know, but so this guy, this one guy said, that this is really kind of like a recreation of this man's organ of sight, which could be possible, and it's using the mud to kind of like hearken to that. I just don't know. Janice, she has a very insightful comment here. He did it to gross out the Pharisees on the Sabbath.
With his spit.
yeah. Especially when Jesus spit, uses saliva to mix it. Yeah, it's kind of gross.
Yeah. So, all right, finally. And Janice and I, we had some debate about this the first time that we watched this. But the creators of the show chose to kill off Rama without Jesus healing her. How difficult is it to cling to the truth of God's love in the face of bitter disappointments? What do you think?
It's hard.
Yeah. I can understand, I can sympathize with Thomas's reaction. At that moment, he really didn't want a hug from Jesus. And Jesus didn't really give him one either. I mean, Peter did, but not Jesus. He wanted action from Jesus. And I know in my life, there's been times when I really wanted God to step in, but he doesn't, So, and that is hard, to sit back and accept the heartbreak. You just have to choke it down. I don't know about you guys, but I really think that was a genius move on their part to have her killed. I really liked her. She seemed like such a delightful person, and she was cute, and she had a good personality. She wasn't as complex as Mary, and and Thomas and Raymond were just so much kind of in that time of their lives where, oh man, we're starting off and it's going to be our lives together are wonderful. We're going to be wonderful. But then they kill her. the creators of the show kill her. Jesus doesn't heal her, And, but a lot of believers have to sit with that disappointment in God,
Yeah.
And I think that's cool that they brought that in. Janice says that it takes faith to realize that Jesus still has you even when he doesn't seem to be there.
Yeah.
But there's one statement that Jesus says right at that time, where Thomas wants her to be restored to life, and Jesus says it's not her time.
Yeah.
And so, but really, what that's kind of like a foreshadowing of the resurrection. She will be restored to life. And I think that there's a moment, right, where in their courtship time, and I'd have to go back and rewatch it, because that's one thing that I love about this series, is that there's so many layers. But I think that there was one moment in the previous episode where they talked about, being together forever or something.
Mm-hmm.
And while she's dying, she talks about her them being together. And her last words to Thomas was to stay with Jesus,
Yep.
And that's really the only way that would be possible.
Yeah.
For their reunion, for Rima and Thomas to have that reunion.
And that's what's going to get him through what's ahead.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So, are you going to be the spoiler alert again,
No.
Nikki?
That's why I want to make sure what episode we were on.
Poor
We
Nikki.
have finished the entire season.
Yeah.
I have
Yeah.
to watch it again. So
Yeah, it's great. I do really enjoy this. Before we wrap up tonight, any additional comments that you guys would like to make? Any thoughts? So, how about this? Let me ask you this. Of the various episodes that you've seen in this whole series of The Chosen, what are maybe the top 2 or 3 episodes that you guys can remember?
When Simon forgives Matthew is one for me.
Yeah, okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I can't think of it off the top of my head right now, but just getting back to that last question, Thomas being there and being a follower and then not getting Jesus to heal her right then and there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's got a lot tougher. We go through it every day in all our lives here, but him being right there and a follower, I said, man, it had to have been really, really for him to struggle through that.
Yeah.
So that was a good scene, one of the top ones. But
Yeah. Lorene?
Janice and I think we're discussing this too. It's not one particular episode, but it's every time Jesus hugs somebody.
Yeah.
I can't wait for that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really liked that the moment where Jesus had that conversation with little James,
Yes.
and he was just really struggling with, why don't you heal me? And I thought that was wonderful. I think that so much of this is wonderful. Janice talks about the time when he healed the bleeding woman. It was another great moment. So, and also she
I love
mentioned,
all the episodes.
yeah,
Each and every one of them.
mm-hmm.
And but I just want to make a comment about this episode.
Yeah.
What sticks on my mind was the jealousy about the Lord changing the name of Simon to
Simon
Peter.
Peter.
And how are we they were influenced to do the parents of, what is his name, Andrew? No.
James and John.
Yeah.
Zebedee and whatever her name is, I can't
Yeah, they
remember.
were influenced by their parents to ask for something more.
Yeah.
How the people, how we hear those people around us, hey, which build more. I think it creates more sins in our heart to ask for more and more. We already have what.
Entitlement. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
and
he's
that
the
kind of
greatest.
resonates many things in my life. That we already have. Jesus already saved us, but we want more and
Yeah.
more and more from what He has given us. And the Lord said, "My grace is sufficient for thee."
Yeah.
And it's that's one touches my heart so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah. Well, guys, I'm going to wrap it up. Thanks again. You guys are wonderful. I really do appreciate you being with me and spending some time here tonight. I really liked this episode, but there's a lot of them I liked. I really liked last week's episode of like you say, the forgiveness of when Peter forgives Matthew, but I also liked the trip to Caesarea Philippi. I thought that's very interesting. So, all right, so that's it. Thank you guys for watching this evening, and you can find our discussions of Discuss the Chosen at on Facebook at Compass Riverside. As I mentioned before, is that Facebook changed up their algorithm, and they won't let us live stream to our Discuss the Chosen group. I don't know why. It's just the way it is, and it's not just us that they have made that very difficult for people to live stream to these types of groups. So not religious groups, any type of private group, but I would encourage you to come back where we do this every Wednesday at 6:30 as much as we're able to, and then also you can watch our broadcasts on Compass at Compass Riverside or at Compass Church Riverside on YouTube on Sundays at 10 a.m. or you can catch the replay there on YouTube at Compass Church Riverside. Thanks again for watching, and I hope to catch you again sometime soon. Bye-bye.